This presentation is going to be about Pete McClure. Made cachets under the name Cuv Evanson. Pete became my best first day cover friend. And presentations, this one actually has an introduction and an ending. An introduction, in my case, history goes back to 1998. The end of April 1998, I got on eBay. The next month, there was a first day ceremony. Actually, 1999. Let's get the history right. There was a first day ceremony at Mount Vernon for a postal card. And right after that, this guy on eBay under the name Cuv Evanson offered a bunch of first day covers with, I think they're label cachets, but I started buying them, bought some more from them a little next month or two. In August, the APS show was in Cleveland. I know Dave Bennett remembers it. They issued the train stamps there. Dave and I and others were in line for about 3 hours to get first day cancels. And there was this bald-headed guy wearing a baseball cap in front of me. I started talking, and somehow after about 5 or 10 minutes, I realized it was the person I'd been buying covers from, and Pete realized who I was, and that was the start of our friendship. A little bit biography on Pete. He was born in Iowa Falls, Iowa. His father ran the John Deere tractor dealership in town. If you're ever wondering where the name Cuv Evanson came from, Pete's father got a lot of phone calls. And when of course, as soon as Pete's father got off the phone, Pete and his sister wanted to know, who's on the phone? Who's on the phone? And his father, his father didn't want to say, he said it was Cuv Evanson on the phone. So when Pete started making cachets, he took the name Cuv Evanson. You'll see the CEC. CEC really, despite what Roland Berger keeps claiming, does not stand for Chuck E. Cheese. Stands for Cuv Evanson Cachets. Roland used to give him a hard time about that. We'd have a good laugh. Pete went to Drake University in Des Moines. He got involved in sales. He worked for Sears for many years. He lived in Billings, Montana, Mankato, Minnesota, probably a couple other places I don't remember. Eventually, he moved to Northern Virginia. His last few years, he worked for Neiman Marcus, or as he called it, Needless Markup, at Pentagon City, just outside of Washington, D.C. Joined our Grabner chapter in Washington, D.C. That's also where I got to know him. But Pete was a country boy at heart. He loved Iowa Falls, where he grew up. Again, his father was a John Deere salesman. His father was also very involved in a community college in town, Ellsworth Community College. Sufficient that there is a McClure Hall at Ellsworth Community College. 2001, Pete did the AmeriCover show out in Denver, had a table at the Cachetmaker Spotlight. On the way back, he stopped off in Iowa Falls, where he'd grown up, and decided that's where he wanted to spend his retirement. He was living in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is about 10 miles south of the Beltway. They were doing a major construction project, what we call the mixing bowl, where the Beltway and I-95 come together. And in 2001, it was slated to be done in 10 or 15 years. And Pete did not want to, as he said, did not want to be in the mixing bowl traffic for the next 10 years. So he bought a house across the street from where he grew up on 201 Sarah Avenue in Iowa Falls, and spent the rest of his life happily there. Humorously getting in trouble with his neighbors in the winter, because when it snowed, he wasn't out there at 6 in the morning with his John Deere to clear the snow off. He spent much of the time making covers. Also, his other hobby was gardening. I actually was probably the only person ever to visit him in Iowa Falls. Nice small house, not fairly friendly neighborhood where almost everyone knew and liked each other. I'm going to tell one quick Pete story and then get into his cachets. Sarah Avenue, where he lived, the I guess it's borough or city of Iowa Falls, realigned the street. And there was a triangle of space, which it was adjacent to Pete's property that belonged to the city, and it made sense for him to buy it. And of course, city said he had to pay for it. But one of the neighbors, an older woman who walked by every day would say, "Pete, how much did you pay for it? How much did you pay for it?" So finally, one day, Pete told her, paid $250,000 for it. And she never asked again. Let me move into some of their cachets. Before I start, a lot of the first group of these cachets, the images came from Dennis Gilson of State College, Pennsylvania, who, when he saw I was giving the presentation, sent me a big zip file of scans of Pete's covers that he had. So I didn't have to go looking for them for myself. Pete started making cachets in the late 80s, early 90s for himself on hand-folded envelopes and running them on a Xerox or mimeograph machine of some sort. By 1999, when he was on eBay, he started doing it. It started doing it on the computer. He sold on eBay until about 2006, when he realized he was making too many covers and losing too much money on it. After that, for a while, he just made them for himself. So I'm going to run through some of his early ones again under the name CEC, Cuv Evanson Cachets. This is one for the summer sports stamp from 2020, and he just used a very simple clip art on it. For some of the issues, I would say Pete would tell you, and he'd agree, he went overboard. For this California statehood issue, he did, I think it was 138 different cachets. So anyone and everybody associated with California, movie industry, scenic, and he sold probably 100 of them. He sold 100 different. He sold on eBay, and there were 30 that nobody ever bought. And I think it was 2010 in America where he gave away all his remaining unsold stock. But this is one that was originally done for the West Point issue, and on cachet showing George Patton, who was born in California. Here's one he did for the Peanut stamp. This stamp is the only time Pete ever got in trouble for licensing. One of the cachets, he showed Snoopy on ice hockey scene with a Zamboni on it. And within an hour, when it got posted on eBay, he got a cease and desist order from the Zamboni company. So he took it offline. But here's one he did with Charlie Brown, hoping the letter is from the little redheaded girl. Here's one he did for the farm flag. And again, a clip art. This was the ATM version of the stamp. This one I added the 2022 flag stamp for when I did the combo, not Pete. Year of the Horse. And this whole group of images again is from Dennis Gilson. Various things he collects. One's Chinese New Year. Here's the Year of the Horse. Fairly simple clip art with a number of different horses. And another one with those of us old timers favorite horse is a horse, of course. Some of you remember, I'm not sure I'm not the only one who remembers Mr. Ed. Pete liked to tie popular culture into the cachets, and I don't know if I have this one or not, but I like it. For West Point, in 2002, Pete probably did 20 or 30 different ones showing people who went to West Point. As an aside, this is how he and a number of us got to meet Mick Zayas, who's now on the AFDCS board and former APS president, former acting secretary of education. But Mick was a West Point graduate and brought everyone around. Dennis Gilson, who these covers from, was also from West Point. We bought quite a few. We have Douglas MacArthur here, George Armstrong Custer, Hap Arnold. This is one of the early, if you look on the bottom, you'll see the CEC logo also has a plane on it. As Pete later years did cachets for the AFDCS, he got very creative in putting these logos on. This is one of the earlier ones where he did it. Omar Bradley, Sylvanus Thayer, who basically laid out much of West Point, U.S. Grant. And they shot a West Point with the cadets marching in formation and the slogan of duty, honor, and country. And the West Point logo. There were probably 30 or 40 different he did for this issue. Here's one for the collage of West Point graduates. He, for many issues, he also tied in people from Iowa. Here is an Iowa Medal of Honor winner, Calvin P. Titus. And you'll see another one later on where he's honoring West Point graduates. And he added the Iowa statehood stamp on for a combo here. Braden Abrams, a general from Vietnam with the Vietnam veteran stamp added. Patton with the Patton stamp. Norman Schwarzkopf of that Desert Storm and Desert Shield with that stamp. One of the more obscure people, Henry Algernon DuPont, another Medal of Honor winner. Pete spent a lot of time on Google, on Yahoo Images, learning about all these people. He was not an artist and not a historian, but he did an excellent job of finding things out on the internet. And Leon Jackson with the Army stamp from the 1930s. William Westmoreland, another Vietnam one. Another issue that Pete made lots and lots of cachets for were the Greetings of America, both the 34-cent version and the later reissue in 37. Did them with postcards. He did them with all kinds of scenes. Did one-of-a-kind things for people with relating to them. Here's one from Ohio with another of the Greetings from Ohio type postcards. That looks like the state capitol and the tower, Terminal Tower, right, Dave? Nod your head. Terminal Tower, Cleveland. I think that might be the train station in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Greetings from Pennsylvania, again with the postcard. Virginia, with the same with the postcard. He did a whole bunch with license plates. You notice this one is a Shecky cachet. Shecky was Pete's invisible evil twin. And Pete used Shecky generally when there was a licensing issue. And he didn't want to be identified with it. You'll see it on some Disney ones later on. Not sure why Shecky did the license plates, but he did all kinds of interesting ones. I was working for a national security agency doing hiring at the time and did one for me that said, I hire spies. I don't really hire spies, I was hiring computer scientists, but he had fun doing them. This is what he did for Pennsylvania, and many of us know the Pennsylvania Turnpike too well. If you want to drive on it these days, be prepared to spend lots and lots of money. American Tollware stamp came out at Apex in 2002, and an image he found of Tollware. The APS stamp show in Atlantic City in 2002, the USPS issued a block of 4 teddy bear stamps. Pete was at the show, drove in from Iowa, was there the entire show, also went the next day to Baltimore for the Ogden Nash first day ceremony, which was one of the more entertaining ones that I ever went to.
Really?
But this is one for the teddy bears. And you notice two bears say TB for teddy bear. Another bear. Different bear. Found lots of images, and again for Dennis Gilson, others, a bear with an army shirt on it. An Einstein bear. I didn't know until I started to scan that one existed, and with a combo with the Einstein stamp. There's a police bear with the police whistle and handcuffs. A magician bear. This was done in honor of Pete's father. Pete's father was an amateur magician for many years. I'll try to I think the name was Cedric the Great. I'm not want to bet on that, but for the Art of Magic stamp, I don't have it. Still have to find the scan. He did do a cachet of his father, but here's the magician bear, and a train engineer bear with the train stamp, model train stamp. Later that year at the AFDCS show, the USPS issued stamp showed the famous Hawaiian missionary stamps, and Pete did at least 4 cachets showing people associated with them. This is Henry Whitney, who was the postmaster in Honolulu at the time. King Kamehameha was the king of Hawaii at the time. I will try and pronounce this one, the church in Hawaii, where the missionary stamps were associated with, and the other church in Hawaii. All 4 of these are with the pictorial cancel from the mega show in New York City. They also reissued the Greetings from America, and he found the chance to do yet more police cars. I don't know if he did all police cars from all 50 states, but I think he did. There are lots of images of police cars out there. I remember one of my road trips commenting on Facebook about the state police of it, and about 10 minutes later, Pete had a cachet up of the state police cars of that state. There's Pennsylvania. For 2023, this is the Nurturing Love envelope, and one of many, many cachets that Pete did with a garden theme. Pete had a very nice garden behind his house. Basically, he would say, if the weather was too cold in the winter, or if it's too hot or a tornado warning in the summer, he'd be inside working on covers. Otherwise, he'd try and work in the garden. Another issue that he did lots of cachets for, the Ohio statehood stamp from 2003. Here's Benjamin Harrison, one of the many presidents born in Ohio. Interesting note on this one, Pete was not in Ohio for that first day ceremony. He was in Biloxi, Mississippi for the APS America stamp, where we had 2 first day ceremonies in a row. And the hotel that I stayed in was destroyed by a barge during Hurricane Katrina. Only the casino ended up on top of the hotel a few years later, but Pete and I were busy there at that show. Here's one he did for the Southeastern lighthouses, combining a lot of images he found on the internet. 2004 love stamp, the Nico Candy Hearts, and has a heart that says love 204. And here's another one he did with the candy hearts also. Here's a set he did for the Art of Disney in 2004, with fairly similar images images of what's on the various stamps. They were all done under Shecky, just in case Disney came after them. I'm guessing Dave Bennett did not turn them in, so never had any problem. You notice he had artist palette on these, part of the logo. There's Mickey. And down through the Lion King. This is not a first day, this is an event cover. First day came out about a week earlier for the World War II memorial. and West Point had a pictorial cancel showing Iowa. So this is the cover Pete did. Wilma Rudolph, this was the postcard rate stamp, and this cachet is actually done on a card, not an envelope. I threw this in because it was in the scans that Dennis sent me. There's a handwritten letter from Pete to Dennis, mailed, I think it's the day after the first day for the Raven Story song, the stamp. Let's move on to covers he did for the AFDCS. 2012, I had taken over AFDCS cover sales, and we were looking for people to do cachets, and the only stamp was coming out at the Postal Museum, and I asked Pete to do a cachet, and Pete said, yeah, I'll do one. I haven't done that many recently. We'll see what happens. He did a label cachet for that, and started doing them for almost every issue. I don't have the first few years worth of scans in here. Some of them are on a USB drive that I had them on that got corrupted, and eventually I may add them in and take some of the other ones out. I'll skip up to 2015. They issued some water lily stamped envelopes again at the AFDCS show in New York City. The envelopes came with stickers you put on the back of the envelope, and I added the sticker on in doing it. And the autograph is Cindy Dyer. She was the photographer who took the picture of the water lilies on the stamps. She lives in Northern Virginia and occasionally comes to stamp shows. I got her an autograph, bunch of stuff that she designed. Pete, for a number of years, we used to have an AFDCS Youth Scholarship Program, where we, for a 20 years later, $25 donation would go to give youth interested in first day covers free memberships. Eventually, since we didn't have a good accounting on it, we just decided to eliminate that and let youth join for free out of basic funds. This one you notice is a Bing cachet. Back in the mid-2010s, we introduced a category in our annual cachet contest for Crosby-like paste-on cachets. And Pete decided to make some of them. So why not call them Bing, as in Bing Crosby? I asked him to do the national. I happen to have a big collection of covers relating to Yellowstone National Park. So that year I said, Pete, let's do the Yellowstone. The logo is on a buffalo or a bison, depending how you want to look at it, the tie-in with the stamp. And I had a lot of leftover stamps. The other one, I think we did maybe 50 of these. So I had to buy a lot of national park stamps. And that year we had a AmeriCover in Falls Church, Virginia, and had a part of our AmeriCover tour went to National Postal Museum, where the annual Sunman lecture was part of our tour. We had a very interesting presentation on post offices in the national parks. Everyone who attended got one of these covers, and Pete did it under CEC logo, and you notice his initials are on a bus. It was a bus tour. One of my favorite issues was the high value Statue of Freedom. They came out at the APS in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania during their summer seminar the week before I retired. And Pete's cachet shows Thomas Gibson Crawford, which meant I sold a lot of these to a certain collector in Wisconsin by the name of Rick Gibson. Crawford designed the Statue of Freedom. He actually died before it was up, and African American doesn't get any publicity, finished it. And you see the CEC FM AFDCS logo on the Capitol. Anything that we did for what we call eventually or called the AFDCS Cachetmaker Series usually had the CEC FM AFDCS logo on it. 2019, we had 5 stamps for post office murals. One of them shows Sugarloaf Mountain in Montgomery and Frederick County, Maryland. And that mural was in the old Rockville, Maryland post office, which Pete shows in the cachet. Was a post office until about 2006 or 7. Even though they built a new one, it stayed as a post office because Congresswoman Connie Morello lived right down the street and did all her mailings from there. But when the roof collapsed, they finally closed as a post office. It was bought by the city of Rockville and is now their police station. And the mural is still in the lobby. All the original post office boxes are still there. If anyone is old enough to remember post office boxes and had the two letter combinations on it, has them. They have the original windows that are the various service areas in the post office. And Pete did multi-color cachets and one color cachets. This is a single color one. Judson Smith was the artist, and the logo has a painter. And they had a kind of unique unofficial location cancel there, but that was canceled in the Rockville post office on the first day. I made it almost all the way out to Sugarloaf Mountain, got 1 to 2 nearest post offices, and got a speeding ticket. So I went through a speed camera, but that's another story. A couple months later, we had George H.W. Bush. When he died, we did 4 date of death cachets. We had a 5th one when the actual stamp came out. This is Bush as a naval aviator. George and Barbara. George, one of his favorite portraits. The Bush father and son. And the cachet that we added for that issue. One of the later portraits repairing the other one that he really liked. We had the moon landing stamp, came out the week before AmeriCover in St. Louis. Here's the basic cachet I did. Pete and I were at Minnesota Stamp Expo, and we bought the stamps on the first day. I ran over to the post office. Anyone who went had a pre-registration badge to show, got a badge that Pete had designed with a first day stamp and cancel. Military working dogs came out the following week at the APS show in Omaha, and I'd asked Pete to do a cachet so I could sell self-service cachets in the booth. And Pete wanted to do 100. I said, Pete, I need at least 200. Well, we sold out by 3 o'clock in the afternoon the first day. Pete was at that show, but it would have been a 3-hour drive home to Iowa Falls, so we didn't do any more afterwards. This shows the military working dogs at what's now Joint Base San Antonio in Texas, and the logo with a dog. This is not an envelope. One of Pete's big collecting interests was Janis Joplin, and this is a deck card for Janis Janis Joplin stamp with a Woodstock stamp added on and 2 Woodstock cachets there. Pete's cachets for Woodstock note that Janis Joplin was on at 2 o'clock in the morning and went through a whole 5th of Southern Comfort while doing 10 songs. And of the cachets, I need to get one here for the Janis Joplin stamp. There is a bottle of Southern Comfort as part of the logo. One of the very popular ones, the T-Rex stamp. This is the first cachet. The first day shows a dinosaur coming out of an egg on its first day. Couple weeks later, they issued a 3-ounce stamp honoring poet Walt Whitman. It's issued at his birthplace out at Huntington Station, Long Island. Very nice little ceremony. And this was the basic cachet he did. One of Walt Whitman's, by the way, Walt Whitman was a very famous letter writer. One of his claims that he was also a nurse, and during the Civil War, he wrote probably thousands of letters for wounded soldiers who weren't able to write on their own. one of Whitman's most famous works was Leaves of Grass. And Barry Kaplan, one of our AFDCS members, had a joke that was making jokes online about Leaves of Grass, that Peter do a cachet with the various interpretations of Leaves of Grass. So this is what we ended up with. The first, last, and only Keck FM AFDCS Kaplan cachet. Pete liked to have fun. The Purple Heart reissue came out at the Indie Pet Show in Noblesville, Indiana. I traveled a lot that year in the ceremonies. This one has all the 12 of the Purple Heart stamps issued so far. And it honors Charles Barger, who was from Iowa, who won the Purple Heart, who won the Medal of Honor and 10 Purple Hearts in World War I. As a side, this cover was lost in Kansas City for 2.5 years and only found after Celia Rodriguez retired and they opened her safe. But eventually I got it and Pete cacheted it, and I think only did maybe 10 of them. Another one of my favorite issues, I was again up at the ceremony, Holiday Wreaths, came out at the L.L. Bean flagship store in Freeport, Maine. And Pete did 4 different cachets. This is the lighthouse that's on the grounds of the L.L. Bean store with a Christmas wreath on it. The L.L. Bean boot. For those who don't know a lot about L.L. Bean, Leon Wood Bean got his start as a mail order firm, selling, of course, one thing, the boot by mail. What's interesting is from the late 1910s through 1930s, his brother was the postmaster of Freeport, Maine. Amazing the trivia you learn at stamp ceremonies. Another bean boot. Many of us have our bean boots. I got a pair around 1990 and it's still all in good shape. And one more. The very last first day ceremony before the pandemic was for Arnold Palmer. Came out during the Pro-Am of the Arnold Palmer Bay Hill Golf Classic sponsored by MasterCard. Came out the day before, and there were 6 of us first day collectors at the ceremony at the Pro-Am with free tickets courtesy in the post office. Otherwise, it would have cost us $50 to get in. Pete did 7 cachets for this issue. There's Arnold Palmer in a yellow sweater. Anybody remember the movie Goldfinger? Classic line from that movie. And you notice the logo is on a golf ball. Another Arnold Palmer doing a putt. The Arnie. Arnold Palmer drink. That one was very popular and kept having to print more of them. Arnold Palmer in a red sweater. Arnold Palmer winning the British Open. And Arnold Palmer in a blue shirt. So 7 for that issue. Maine was the next one that came out. I was planning to go up to Augusta, Maine for the Sunday afternoon ceremony. The Maine's in Armory opposite the state capitol when COVID-19 hit and the country shut down, but didn't stop Pete from making cachets. We started out with 11 of them. He did a couple after that, I think 6 or 7 more for special requests. This is just a few of them. Maine State Capitol and the logo in a moose. You know you're in Maine 2 ways when on the interstates. Well, first of all, the speed limit signs are miles and kilometers, and there's moose warning signs. There's again Leon Wood Bean, better known as L.L. Bean. This is the whole famous people born in Maine. Film director John Ford. Stephen King, the horror author. That one was very popular. Well, we named our lobster. And May 15th was also the birthday of AFDCS President Lloyd DeVries. So we made this cover up. They were giving away free to anyone who would agree to admit that they were a friend of Lloyd's. And they actually exist in two varieties. I think the first 10 or so I did have the Celebrate stamp upside down.
Oh,
Both Pete and I wore Fitbits for step tracking, and Pete started doing a cover every million for his, so he started doing them for me. This one is for 8 million steps at Castle Annapolis Junction, where I have my post office box. Except if you look closely, it's an error cancel. They left the C out of junction, and we were using the cancel for 4 months. I happened to put an unofficial location on eBay, and somebody pointed out that it was spelled wrong. I walked in the next day and they took a look at it. None of us believed that we've been using it for 4 months and hadn't noticed. Another issue that Pete may have gone overboard on, but we sold all of them. I've sold every single one of them. The Mayflower and Plymouth Harbor. If I remember right, we did 17 cachets and a few specials. And they are all sold out. And Pete was also collecting this issue.
Wow.
And the logo is on a pilgrim hat. This is the Pilgrims Departing. Did a whole bunch on people, these Mayflower descendants, some of which are better known than others. President John Adams was a descendant of John Alden. And that's another error cover, because you notice does not have the John. I just noticed it now. Does not have the John Adams stamp on it. Oops. That's Martin Van Buren. Miles Standish. Not a descendant, but it was on it. This one was surprising, became probably the most popular. There's a legend that the first person ashore was a woman by the name of Mary Chilton. And we kept having to do more of these. Everyone wanted to buy this one. Here's a descendant that probably a lot of people don't know. Marilyn Monroe. Calvin Coolidge. Silent Cal. Descendant of Edward Doney on the Mayflower. Event cover. That week, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. I emailed Pete suggesting we do a cachet. He said, "Oh, nobody will be ever interested in that." Well, I convinced him to do 2 cachets. He did 50 of each, and by December they were sold out. And I did not have any extras to do dual cancels when the stamp for her came out last year. This is the famous, notorious RBG cachet with the logo on the scales of justice, and the postmark is the postmark zip code of the Supreme Court. And here's one with her more famous official portrait from the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery. We regularly have done sports covers. The baseball covers started the year that the Chicago Cubs, long-suffering Chicago Cubs, finally won the World Series. That was an interesting cover because they won it in Cleveland. Sorry, Dave. And they won it in Cleveland just after midnight. So we did Cleveland cancels and Chicago cancels. And Chicago, when they won it, was the day before. I sent the covers into Kansas City. I got a call. You're asking for 2 different dates. I said, yeah, it occurred. They won the World Series at 12:15 in the morning in Cleveland, but it was still only 11:15 in Chicago. But here's one for the 2020 World Series, which was they played all the games in Arlington, Texas. Dodgers won it, and very conveniently, the first day was also the first day of the drug-free USA stamp, so it's also an unofficial location cancel. 2021 Love Stamp from Loveland, Colorado, where they have lots of hearts. I was actually there a few years ago. I think it was 2012, the couple of days after Valentine's Day, and they really have all these hearts on display. This is a interesting tribute cachet. Pete did a lot of cachets for the inauguration. We had a collector in Maryland by the name of Frank Cohen from Falston, Maryland. Frank only collected cards. And Frank had asked if Pete was going to do any cards for the inauguration. So Pete printed up a bunch of cards for a few of these, for the cachets. I serviced them and got mailed them to Frank, and he got them about a week before he passed away. I did get a thank you from him while he was in the hospital, and it made his day when he got them. That was the type of thing Pete would do. Give him never suggest something to Pete. She knew he'd go do it. But back in 2017, when Trump was inaugurated, I was selling a bunch of Trump inaugural covers at Southeast Stamp Expo in Atlanta, and somebody from Esper asked me, was I going to do a cover for Obama's last day in office? And again, the worst thing you do for me is suggest it. So Pete did a quick cachet, and that turned out to be our best seller for the entire Obama inauguration. Did 170 of them, sold them all probably in 6 months. So we did the same thing in 2021. And this was for the Trump's last day in office. I don't care if Republicans bought in honor of Trump or Democrats bought it to celebrate. As long as their money was good, they can buy them. And this one also sold out. 2021, the year of the ox. The Colorado hair streak butterfly. For all the butterfly stamps, these are for oversized, non-machinable oversized greeting cards. For all the ones dating back to at least 2013 or 14, Pete did 2 cachets, one showing the butterfly. Again, the logo's in a butterfly. And he did one with this guy trying to catch the butterfly. So this exists for multiple versions. But for this issue, since I collect national parks, for those that don't know, Estes Park, Colorado is the base point to go to Rocky Mountain National Park, which is where the Colorado hair streak butterfly lives. So he did one for me with the logo of Rocky Mountain National Park. But we went a little bit further. The most famous location, Estes Park, is the Stanley Hotel. Anybody remember the movie The Shining with Jack Nicholson? Well, that's where it was filmed. The Stanley Hotel was built by Frederick Stanley, better known for the Stanley Steamer automobile. He had tuberculosis, and his doctor recommended going to Colorado for the clearer air. So he built the Stanley Hotel. And for complete the 6 degrees of separation, the Stanley Steamer stamp was issued on my birthday. So we have many degrees of concordance on this. We have a Stanley Steamer, we have the butterfly, we have the hotel. That was a fun cover. Oversized one, again with the Annapolis Junction unofficial location for Heritage Breeds, which was the first public stamp ceremony after the pandemic. And the cachet shows some of the Heritage Breeds and Mount Vernon. We had 10 stamps showing Sun Science, and this shows the probe that took them. Next week, they issued a stamp showing Yogi Berra, honoring came out the Yogi Berra Museum and Library on the campus of what's now Montclair University in Montclair, New Jersey, about 10 minutes from where I grew up. And this is one of several, I think 7 or 8 cachets Pete did. This one shows the 2 houses Yogi Berra lived in. And the cancel is from the nearest post office to where Yogi lived. Raven Story from 2021, one of the more popular cachets we did that year, the logo on a Native American totem pole. We have the lighthouses, came out on August 6th. 2021 at NavSync Twin Lights in New Jersey, officially in Highland, New Jersey. And this is the generic cachet for all 5 lighthouses with the unofficial location from the Highlands Post Office. Very cooperative post office. I walked in there with a stack of envelopes. The clerk, there was maybe 6 or 7 people in line. The clerk saw me with the envelopes and, "Are you here to get cancels? Here's the cancel. Go use the other counter and cancel." And there's NavSync that the lighthouse is named after. Cancel at the NavSync post office, which is no longer a NavSync. It's in Atlantic Highlands, but unless you happen to live in the area. My aunt and uncle lived about 5 minutes from there, so I know the area fairly well. That's the other local cancel. That's the lighthouse depicted on the stamps. Sandy Hook, NavSync, where it is highest point on the East Coast on the Atlantic Ocean south of Maine. We did, I think it was 17 cachets for Missouri. And they did not sell as well as Maine or other locations, but here's the Gateway Arch. Pete was a fan of Rush Limbaugh's radio show, and he was born in Missouri, and he advertised himself as the voice of America. We have Harry Truman, again born in Missouri. Next month was Message Monsters. You look at the cachet. He did not like these stamps. I'll leave it at that. They sort of grew on me, but 2021 Christmas from Santa Claus, Indiana. So two different people in DC area asked if I was going to do a cachet for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier 100th anniversary, which the Postal Service chose to ignore. So we did one. And I saw the last 2 of these cachets at Great American Stamp Show this year. 2022, the 4-cent blueberry coil with Pat's Domino. I found my throw on Blueberry Hill, the logo on a piano. There's the Daisy for Global Forever stamp, logo on a watering can. Pete Seeger, we ended up doing 4 cachets. There's one of image of Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger's original band, the Weavers, which Pete dropped out of when the Weavers wanted to do a jingle for a cigarette commercial. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and Pete did Bruce did a cover album of Pete Seeger things. And at one of our Grosvenor chapter Zoom meetings, I suggested that I need a cachet for that. And I say about an hour later, Pete had emailed me the image for it. And the logos are on the 6-string guitar. This is the cachet that sort of got me in trouble. Some people in the AFDCS. You know the story of Pete Seeger? He called before the House Un-American Affairs activity, and he asked, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Do you know anyone who's a member of a Communist Party? He refused to answer. Eventually was convicted. It was overturned, but that largely caused Seeger to be blackballed from the entertainment industry for almost a decade. And our AFDCS president, a few other people sort of rejected that it had hammer and sickle in it. So we redid the logo and took AFDCS off of it. Keep these cachets in mind. I have a story to go with them that goes right at the end of the presentation. Elephants. Another simple clip art cachet. James Webb Space Telescope. Dave Dresner, who runs Colorado Cachets, asked me if I was going to get a cancel for Death of Queen Elizabeth. And I said, all right, I'll do one. And this is the cachet Pete did. I settled on Elizabeth, New Jersey as a cancel, and chose Queen Elizabeth looking at the Royal Stamp album. This one's date of death and date of funeral, and they are sold out. Another one I did because Dave Bresner was interested in sharing the cost of a special cancel, death of Pope Benedict XVI. This one took a while to produce, because when Kansas City did the first 50 of her millions, instead of Rome, New York, they had a typo on their order and did Romo, New York. Here's one that Lloyd DeVries serviced. So this is a LDV AFDCS cachet for a Canada stamp for the discovery of insulin. Don't do Canada stamps too often, but they've sold very well. Going back to the World Series, 2019, my Washington Nationals won the World Series. And here's the cover, one of the two covers from it. Cancel. Also have covers cancel in Houston, where they won in Game 7. NBA basketball, the 2020 due to the pandemic, they played at the Disney World of Sports in Kissimmee, Florida. And here's the cover for that. Super Bowl for football, here's 2022. Pete was a big, Pete and also Lloyd DeVries, our president, were big Amtrak fans. So this is the 50th anniversary of Amtrak. And the logo is on an Amtrak train. Done a bunch of hockey covers. Starting in 2018, when Washington Capitals, the long suffering, which would be doubly redundant, or more commonly known in DC, the Washington Choking Dogs, surprised everyone and won the Stanley Cup. And since I'm from DC area, I've been to a few Capitals games. I was at the infamous game in '87 on Easter morning when they lost in 4 overtimes at 2 o'clock in the morning. But when they won it in '87, in '18, I did my first hockey cover. Did 50 covers when the DC canceled, 50 in Las Vegas, and expected never to sell that many of them. And they were sold out by the APS show in Columbus that year. Sold a bunch of covers to a guy by the name of Irv Osterer in Ottawa, who is big designing covers and cancels in Canada, involved in Judaica, and very, very big hockey fan and a graphic artist. And he's designed a number of hockey cachets for me. When the Seattle Kraken became the latest team in the National Hockey League, he won the cachet, and this is one he designed, and Pete tweaked a little bit. I think I have 1 or 2 of them left. A lot of hockey fans among cover collectors. Mars Rover got here's the launch in 2020. Pete really loved this UFO logo, so it shows up on a number of covers. This was the launch, and that was the landing. And 4 years later, the rover is still working. It was only supposed to last 3 weeks. And there's the other candle, the cancel for the landing. U.S. did not do a stamp honoring John Glenn on his 100th birthday. His rights are owned by a Midwestern college, and they would not let the post office honor him for free. So we did a cover anyway. He was a Marine. He's in the U.S. Senate, and those are the logos of his 2 space flights. When the very first SpaceX man launch was about to go up back in 2020, somebody on Facebook asked, "Are you going to do a cover for it?" I said, I emailed Pete. Pete saw it. Pete wanted to know what SpaceX was. Well, I explained to him. I got him to do, I think, 2 cachets for that first launch. And by the time Pete passed away, I think we did 3,000 or 4,000 SpaceX covers, generally 4 for each launch and 4 for each landing. And I'm actually now having Chris Cowie do a couple of them. Was exchanging emails today on what I needed done. Here's just another SpaceX. This is a landing cover. This is one of the ships that picks up the capsules where it lands. Another SpaceX one showing the crew. We don't limit it to SpaceX. Blue Origin has launched a number up high enough It looks like this cachet is cut off on the scan. That's Jeff Bezos, who owns the Blue Origin, the Washington Post, Amazon, other smaller companies, but there's the launch. On their first launch was also Wally Funk. Wally Funk would have been a Mercury astronaut, except that she out-tested all the males, and NASA was embarrassed and decided they didn't want to launch a woman into space. And finally, in 2021, she went up on the initial Blue Origin New Shepard and became an astronaut. This is the most famous person who's gone up on Blue Origin, William Shatner, who at the time was the oldest person. He's since been beaten out, but we did 100 each or 4 designs, and they sold out very quickly. This is an interesting one. One of our Brenner chapter members has a friend who's the docent at the Clara Barton Historical Site in Glen Echo, Maryland. We tried to get a pictorial postmark for her 200th birthday, and was a Christmas. The postmistress in Glen Echo said, absolutely not, I can do it, blah, blah, blah. So we got the Castle of Kansas City. I did 200 covers up and donated them to the visitor center there.
Ooh, nice.
This is an add-on that Pete did for the Moby Dick envelope. Thomas Hack from the Grainer chapter got a donation of a whole bunch of uncached postal stationery. Pete added the cachets and marked when he did them. This was done in 2020. There's another one for the Centennial stamp envelope. Be careful if you give Pete a cachet. There's another add-on did for Otto Thomasak. Otto's a big Christmas collector, so he did I Love Christmas first day covers. This is an interesting one because it ended up in first days. Pete did 3 or 4 of them on Leap Day with Alfred E. Newman from Man Magazine that he loved. I happened to be talking with Al Starkweather, who was the editor at the time. Somehow we got talking about Leap Day. I mentioned I had a cover. Next day, I sent him a scan and it ended up in first days. Again, Pete loved Janis Joplin. This would have been her 78th birthday. So when I did for him, cancel in my post office, he also did him in Iowa Falls. Quick story here. When you vote by mail in Maryland, they send you some JPEG files that you can put it in your thing saying I voted. They sent me 3 of them. In fact, they just sent, when they got my mail-in ballot this year, I got the same 3. Actually, they sent 6, sent 3 in English and 3 in Spanish. So I had covers canceled on election day. Pete do a couple of cachets. This is the Maryland flag. This is the Bay Bridge. Annapolis to the Eastern Shore. Black-Eyed Susan, Baltimore Oriole, Crab, and horse racing for the Preakness. Then I found this image online that said, let's do some covers for Rick Gibson. Well, it turned out this image, JPEG, had 8 or 9 different watermarks hidden in it. Pete said it took him 2 hours to pull them all out. But there was a non-commercial just for me, Rick, and Pete. So we think it's legal. And again, the Annapolis Junction is misspelled. The John Glenn that I showed earlier. This is one he did for me on my birthday. The Marvin Gaye stamp also came out on my birthday, so it's a nice combo. Pictorial cancel for vaccine station from the Omaha Stamp Show. I sent Pete a scan of my COVID-19 vaccination card. Many of you probably remember. And he used that for a cachet. I think he only did 2 or 3 of them. We did a bunch of Navy cancels, undersea CFM, anniversary of the USS Jefferson City, USS Carl Vinson. I visited Iowa Falls twice. And this is from the second visit on my cross-country drive on way out to Sacramento for Great American Stamp Show 2022. First visit was in 2019 when I went to Minnesota Stamp Expo, stopped in Iowa Falls, then went to St. Louis for AmeriCover and Omaha for APS Stamp Show. But since I was driving out Route 80, this was only an hour detour. This is the Welcome to Iowa Falls sign with Ellsworth Community College, where they have McClure Hall. Turns out the development that Pete lives in is called Foster Farms.
Oh,
This is the Foster Boulevard sign and Foster Park. And I stopped by, visited Pete. We had dinner together. In hindsight, I noticed Pete had lost some weight. I also noticed that Pete wasn't eating as much. Apparently, he was already sick at that time, but none of us realized it. And of course, he had a cover waiting for me. On the way back from Sacramento, I had never been to Washington State or Idaho. So I detoured up the I-5 to Seattle, stopped by the Space Needle. Pete, and it's back in 1962, when the Seattle World's Fair occurred, Pete and his sister Mary and their parents went on a three-week trip to the West Coast to visit the Seattle World's Fair and other such places. As Pete points out, in an unair-conditioned car. So Pete collected the Seattle World's Fair issue. I said I was going there. He sent me a bunch of stamps, and this is canceled at the I think it's Queen Anne Station Finance Office, which is the nearest post office to Space Needle. But I remember visiting it. First of all, it was that rare clear day in Seattle where you could see all the way to Mount Rainier. And it was 85 degrees. They had excessive heat warnings. Everyone was complaining about the heat. I did not tell them that driving up the I-5 in Northern California the previous day had been 105. But Pete did that cover, and I think I maybe canceled 5 or 10 of them. I collect the 10-cent SPA souvenir sheet add-on he did for me in 2022. Historically incorrect, but I like it. As I get to the end of it, this is getting to the end of the story. This is the last email I ever got from Pete. April 27th, and I'll show you the cover in the next slide. One of the big stamp shows in Northern Virginia is called Spring Pex. Spring Pex has been at a high school for many, many years. And to recent years, it was called Robert E. Lee High School. In the politically correct days of today, it's been renamed John Lewis High School. That's still the Lancers. They went from Lee Lancers to Lewis High School Lancers, and Pete made these covers up. The comment at the end says, I'm going to misplace them. Remember the Pete Seeger cachets? I was going to that first day ceremony, and Pete made me a bunch of cachets in advance and mailed them to me before I left on my road trip. And I got out to Minnesota, which I was going to before I was going to Rhode Island. And I realized I left them home. So I emailed Pete. I was stopping with my family in New Jersey on the way to Rhode Island, and he priority mailed a package of cachets to me, that the replacement, and kept reminding me of it. But this was the very last cachet I ever got, last correspondence I ever got from Pete. I began to worry the next few days. I didn't get any emails from him. I believe we emailed almost every day. On Sunday, May 7th, he was found bedridden in his house. His neighbors hadn't seen him for a while. Fortunately, in Iowa Falls, people leave their doors unlocked so they can get in without doing any damage. He was taken to the local hospital, found that he had terminal cancer, was airlifted to Cedar Rapids to a larger hospital, and spent his last two weeks in hospice care there. Passed away on May 21st. He wasn't close to his family, but his son and daughter did get out in time to see him. And this is the uncanceled version of it. I need to throw in the white slide here. Shows the John Lewis stamp and Robert E. Lee combo cover with the first day cancel. Looks like I deleted the wrong slide today. So let me get to the epilogue of the story here. For a couple of years now, I've done the Walpeck show in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's a 2-day show in Boxborough, same place the Philatelic show is. Some people may remember the Hotel for AmeriCover being there a couple of times. Well, they haven't done anything to improve it since, but Sunday afternoons about, show runs to 4 o'clock, it's about 3 o'clock. Dealers are packing to go out. Wayne Garrett, who East Coast people know, is next to me. He had all his covers in the van already. And this older gentleman walks up to the booth. And he says, my brother-in-law wasn't big in the first day covers. I'm sure you don't know him. His name was Pete McClure. And after I almost fell over, I said, yeah, he was my best friend. Well, it turns out that Pete's sister and brother-in-law live 5 miles from the show.
Oh, my God.
And Pete called up, her brother-in-law called up Pete's sister. She got over in time. We spent a half hour exchanging stories. They weren't close. I was actually able to fill in a lot of Pete's last 20 years in Iowa Falls. The rest of Pete's children were family, are city people. His son now lives in Brooklyn. His son runs the website for Major League Soccer. But they were city people. After Pete got divorced, they went their way, and they weren't estranged or anything. They just didn't talk a lot. But I was able to fill in some of the blanks in what Pete had done in recent years, showed him the covers, showed him some of the ones that showed the things in Iowa Falls. Mary, his sister, tweaked a couple of my stories. And when I gave this presentation at Philatelic show in Boxborough in April, they were able to come and attend it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that ended the story. I think that's my last slide. Yep. So it had a begin. For once, it had a beginning and an end.